From understated returns to form from a comedy giant to notable offerings that no doubt set the stage for greater things to come. You may not have heard much about these outstanding turns, but all that is about to change. This is film and TV performances no one ever talks about. John Malkovich, Space Force. The fact that Netflix's lackluster blast-off that was Space Force managed to secure a second season at all was enough to leave many a casual onlooker scratching their heads. But one quick glance at the routinely riotous time John Malkovich appeared to be having on set more than justifies this second stab at space comedy. While the likes of Steve Carell, Lisa Kudrow, and Ben Schwartz may not have done much to maintain audiences' attention in the show, Malkovich excels whenever he is given a second to flex his comedic muscles. His Dr. Adrian Mallory's frequent bouts of sparring with Carell's General Mark Arnard make for some of the most side-splitting back and forth you'll stumble upon on the streaming service, as Malkovich adds his usual unexpected electricity to even the most questionable of scripts.
Ted Levine, The Silence of the Lambs. Now, considering it's one of just 3 movies in history to win the Big 5 Academy Awards, that's Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress and Screenplay, it might seem a bit odd to talk about any aspect of The Silence of the Lambs as being underappreciated, but people trip over themselves to praise the performances of Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster so much, quite understandably at least, that they seem to forget the film's third great piece of acting, Ted Levine, who plays the supporting role of deranged serial killer Buffalo Bill, who delivers an utterly bone-chilling performance which bafflingly received little praise from award bodies and isn't much talked about today. As much as Anthony Hopkins' performance as Hannibal Lecter became impossibly iconic, Levine's work is equally great, without which the piece just wouldn't be as nearly viscerally unsettling. His performance is so much more than the widely parodied scene where he tucks his junk in the mirror while listening to Goodbye Horses, but that's the single image that most people associate it with. The fact that he wasn't nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar in a relatively soft year is nothing short of criminal. Oscar Isaac, A Most Violent Year. There's little doubt that Oscar Isaac will end up with an Academy Award sooner or later, and he absolutely should have been nominated for one in J.C. Chander's expertly crafted crime drama A Most Violent Year. Despite scoring strong critical praise and considerable award hype, the film sank like a stone at the box office and failed to make a dent on the awards circuit, ensuring that Isaac's sublime work went largely unsung. Isaac plays a character called Abel, a heating oil entrepreneur who struggles to expand his business in the face of extreme, often violent competition. This isn't a remotely showy performance from Isaac, but instead a phenomenally restrained piece of acting, simmering with furious intensity in the way that it's kind of reminiscent of a 1970s Al Pacino. Though Isaac's career skyrocketed the very next year after he appeared in Star Wars The Force Awakens, this is still the strongest work that he's ever produced, and yet curious few have actually seen it. So you know what? Do yourself a favour and don't sleep on it any longer.
Florence Pugh, Little Drummer Girl. Long before she was kicking Clint Barton's ass or even picking up Academy Awards nods for her work on Little Women, Florence Pugh was making her first real splash as part of BBC's The Little Drummer Girl miniseries. As the mysterious Charmaine Charlie Ross, Pugh lines up alongside the likes of Michael Shannon and Alexander Skarsgård, but undoubtedly eclipsed both Hollywood names in her mesmerizing depiction of an actress suddenly roped into the world of espionage. Is it a surprise that Pugh would go on to pop up in everything from Fighting With My Family to Midsommar in the wake of this performance that showed a level of maturity and mastery of her art way beyond her years so early in her career?
Charlize Theron, Young Adult. To be completely fair, Charlize Theron did receive a Best Actress Golden Globe nomination for her astonishing performance in Jason Reitman's dark dramedy Young Adult, yet given how the film and the performance quickly fell off the radar thereafter, you barely know it. Here she plays Mavis, a garden variety train wreck of a human being, a 37-year-old alcoholic ghostwriter who returns to her hometown in the hopes of winning back her happily married high school boyfriend. She takes a potentially cartoonish character trapped in a state of arrested development and makes her inexplicably relatable, tap dancing on a tonal razor's edge as she renders Mavis both pitiable and weirdly charming. It's tough to make a blatant asshole like this likable, but she pulls it off splendidly. Furiosa's great and all, but this is arguably the finest performance of her storied career, and one that totally merits far more attention than it's ever received.
Russell Tovey, Years and Years. Sticking with another British drama series that isn't spoken of nearly as much as it deserves to be, 2019's Years and Years saw a truly stacked cast of thespians all navigate themselves through a dystopian Britain, as both political and technological changes impact the entire country, including the little unit of the Lyons family. Among this squad was none other than Russell Tovey's frequently engaging Daniel, a character who who is driven to protect the man his heart belongs to as the country's political goalposts keep moving. With this drive to protect comes a deeply layered turn from the Brit, with Tovey imbuing Daniel with as much fierce arrogance as he does compassion and loyalty over the course of the often heartbreaking series, forging quite the small screen career since turning heads as a werewolf in Being Human. Years and years prove once again why Tovey is up there with the finest Brits working on telly today.
Michael Stuhlbarg, a serious man. Surely the best performance in a Coen brothers movie that nobody ever talks about, Michael Stuhlbarg is magnificent as a put-upon physics professor Larry who struggles to reconcile his Jewish faith with the avalanche of bad luck coming his way. A legendary sad sack performer for the ages, he's perfectly in tune with the Coen's singularly off-kilter tone, delivering a deliciously deadpan performance as the deck becomes increasingly stacked against him. Larry's search for meaning in a world seemingly devoid of it is intensely relatable no matter your own faith, and though it's not a performance filled with Oscar-baiting tirades, it's totally worthy of a Best Actor nomination. He was at least nominated by the Golden Globes, and though the role absolutely made his career, it's rarely mentioned in the pantheon of great Coen brothers performances, which is a real shame.
Daniel Radcliffe, Miracle Workers. Danny Radcliffe has enjoyed quite the eclectic output since his days in the wizarding world, but arguably the most unexpected and perhaps underrated of these projects comes in the form of his gloriously bizarre performance as part of TBS's Miracle Worker, a show that hilariously delves into a different work throughout each increasingly nutty season. Dialing it up again for Season 3's Oregon Trail Tale, Radcliffe steals the show once more during a coming round the mountain scarcely called song and dance number that more than earns this comedy a spot on your watch this immediately list. Seriously, go and give it a watch, it's a good time.
Tilda Swinton, we need to talk about Kevin. Tilda Swinton is one of cinema's all-time great chameleons, and yet has arguably never been better than when playing one of her more down-to-earth characters in Lynn Ramsey's challenging drama We Need to Talk About Kevin. Swinton plays Eva, the mother of the titular Kevin, who is in prison after going on a high school killing spree. Much of the film is focused on her trying to come to terms with her son's act, and any role that she might have played in it by failing to bond with her son. Though much of her emotion is subtle and internalized, Swinton does a fantastic job depicting a self-tormented woman who is quite literally spat on by society. The film's subject matter makes for uncomfortable viewing, yet thanks to Ramsey's uncompromising approach, Swinton is able to deliver a frank, full-bodied rendition of a parent in absolute crisis.
Daniel Kaluuya, Black Mirror. Going on to become a thoroughly mind-bending hit that just about every actor worth their salt is champing at the bit to appear in at some point down the road. The earlier stages of Black Mirror gave us a brief glimpse into what the future would or could hold for not just the unsuspecting tech-obsessed human race, but a rising British star. In Daniel Kaluuya's turn as Bing and Bing Madsen in 15 Million Merits, we see the eventual Black Panther and Get Out artist really grow into a serious on-screen presence, entrancing those watching on with his nuanced exploration of what a person is willing to do to break free from a system he is tired of being trapped and manipulated by. With many being quick to point to Kaluuya's charming work as Posh Kenneth during his run on Skins, or even his award-winning theatre work as part of Roy Williams' Sucker Punch as the roles that put him on the map, the fact that Jordan Peele has even gone on record to admit that it was Kaluuya's Black Mirror tour de force showing that earned him his starring part in Get Out only hammers home how important a milestone this often forgotten Black Mirror entry was for the now Oscar winner's career.
Aaron Eckhart, Thank You for Smoking. As much as you could probably put Aaron Eckhart's underrated performance as the Dark Knight's Harvey Dent on this list, considering how thoroughly he's overshadowed by Heath Ledger's Joker, the strongest work of his career actually came a few years earlier in Jason Reitman's satirical drama Thank You for Smoking. The chiseled jaw, impossibly slick Eckhart is perfectly cast as Big Tobacco spokesperson Nick Naylor, so infuriatingly charming as to be entirely believable in the role of a man intended to reshape public opinion on smoking. And yet, the majority of audiences will associate Eckhart with The Dark Knight and not a whole lot else, despite this being an easy standout turn of his career. And in what is starting to sound like a bit of a broken record, Eckhart was also nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance, all the while the Academy snubbed him.
Jean Smart, Mare of Easttown. Much of the praise and admiration thrown towards 2021's HBO crime drama Mare of Easttown, led by the always impressive Kate Winslet, was quite rightly sent the leading lady's way. But propping up this powerhouse performance from Winslet was an ensemble cast each worthy of their own portion of sizable acclaim, with Jean Smart in particular being largely overlooked when banging beating the drum for this twisting and turning story. As Mare Sheehan's mother, Helen Fahey, Smart turns scene stealing into an art form, but still finds the time to lay some genuine heart into a character who acts as the sharp-witted comedic relief in an often painfully dark tale. Likely not aided by the fact that Smart also caught critics' eyes with her brilliant words on Hacks in 2021, her wicked yet warm foil to Winslet's often stoic Mare made for some of last year's most exhilarating and underappreciated viewing.
Robert Pattinson, Cosmopolis. As much as many had an intense knee-jerk reaction to Robert Pattinson's casting as Batman, the actor has himself won tremendous amount of goodwill in recent years with terrific performances in the likes of Good Time, High Life, The Lighthouse, and The Devil All the Time. But even in the midst of his years as part of the Twilight franchise, Pattinson proved himself incredibly talented, yet many just weren't ready to hear it. In the case of David Cronenberg's 2012 dramatic thriller Cosmopolis, you can at least understand why so many people slept on it, because the film is incredibly challenging with its dense dialogue, random asides, and generally inaccessible filmmaking style. But no matter what you make of the film entire, Pattinson's performance as a self-destructive billionaire Eric Parker is brilliantly calibrated to make lurid sense of the knowingly verbose stream of conscious dialogue. It's confirmed that Pattinson was a serious actor years before the world actually caught on to this fact, and unsurprisingly, Pattinson received little awards attention for this turn, but if you become enamored by his more recent work, then you absolutely need to pay this 2012 cult gem a visit.
Jim Carrey, kidding! After absolutely tearing it up throughout the late 90s and early 2000s as one of the most diverse and unpredictable performers of his generation, the great Jim Carrey experienced something of a dip in form. The likes of Mr. Popper's Penguins and Dumb and Dumber 2 did little to convince critics and fans alike that Carrey had anything left to offer, but then the Liar Liar sensation decided to turn his attention to the small screen, and with Showtime's Kidding, he managed to stumble upon said former genius. Settling into the shoes of the Fred Rogers-esque Jeff Piccirillo like he'd been wearing them for a lifetime, Carrey's Jim Pickles acts as a comforting light to kids throughout his friendly puppet show, but also harbors the pain brought on by one of his sons being tragically killed in a car accident. As the show unfolds, Carrey expertly gives us glimpses of a man broken by a savage world, without ever allowing his relentless optimism to come across as caricature. As stellar a turn as this was, Kidding ultimately bit the dust after 2 seasons, with Carrey since disappearing into the less inspiring territory of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
Marion Cotillard, Rust and Bone. Though Marion Cotillard missed out on an Oscar nomination for her performance in the stellar 2012 drama Rust and Bone, her performance was largely lauded on the awards circuit, even if it ultimately picked up few wins. Cotillard plays a killer whale trainer Stephanie, who after an accident involving one of the animals has her legs amputated, and naturally struggles to adjust to her new mode of life. She does so much more than simply make us basically sympathize with Stephanie. It's a deeply visceral performance which demonstrates the toughness and strength of character required to adjust to such a drastic change in life circumstances. Despite being lauded at the time, her work here is rarely mentioned when discussing the actress these days, largely overshadowed by her more statuesque performance in films such as Inception and The Dark Knight. Val Kilmer, Tombstone. As much as Val Kilmer has a ton of iconic performances to his name, the one that absolutely doesn't get nearly enough credit is his movie-stealing turn as the tuberculosis-riddled Doc Holliday in the terrifically entertaining 1993 western Tombstone. Though Kurt Russell's Wyatt is by all rights the film's protagonist, Tombstone belongs to Kilmer's loquacious, weirdly suave and totally badass Holliday. Kilmer's charismatic turn grabs the viewer's attention every second, which amidst an ensemble cast is no easy feat to accomplish. It's the finest work of his career bar none, and while Kilmer's performance was widely lauded by critics at the time, the film quickly disappeared from the public consciousness after its Christmas release. It's a real shame that his performance isn't more talked about in comparison to, say, his roles in the likes of Top Gun, The Doors, Heat, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and even Batman Forever. Bafflingly, the only awards Kilmer ever ended up nominated for was 2 MTV Movie Awards for Best Male Performance and Most Desirable Male. Brilliant.